Good evening. Thank you for joining me as I open the Town of Pittsburgh Planning Board meeting, regular meeting for Monday, July 20th, 2026. We do have a quorum. Miss Piard is not here and Mr. Buster is not here. I almost said Mr. James. We do have a quorum. As far as the agenda, has everybody had a chance to look that over? And do we have any amendments we would like to make to that? I will accept a motion to.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, I have a motion by Elfrida Alston to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Charity. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then we'll welcome Christina. If noted, she is here. We'll move to our planning board member meeting attendance. So it is per the UDO, excused absences due to illness, absences from the meeting due to personal hardship, if approved by a majority vote of the planning board, shall not constitute a lack of attendance. Absences shall be entered into the minutes of the meeting as either excused or unexcused at the next regularly scheduled meeting. So currently we have to vote on these. I don't want to make this a courtroom by any means. If you tell me that it was a hardship or an illness, I'm going to take you.
Oh, it was a hardship for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then obviously we have to vote on it, but I have no reason not to believe you. So first, I guess we'll go Frida. I don't know if you just want to.
Frida's fine.
If was it?
It's a hardship.
Okay, then I'll take a motion to accept that as excused.
Move.
All right, moved by Alan Wilson. I have a second.
Second.
Second from Connie McAdams for an excused absence. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Pass. So Miss Christina Piard.
I had a family illness.
Okay.
Family members.
All right. So then I have a
Motion.
motion to accept it as an excused absence. Connie McAdams, second by Alan Wilson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Unanimous on both accounts. We will move to the minutes from our April meeting. It's been a while. Has everyone had a chance to look those over? And do we have anything any typos that need to be updated?
Didn't see any. Make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, a motion from Frida to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? Second by Christina Piard. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And so did you mean to put development department updates before public comment? Do you want to do that? Okay.
Thank you for your time again. For the updates, I wanted to introduce Elizabeth Whitby. She is our new planning two, and she comes from the private consulting side with a background in UDO development. On August 31st, we will have hopefully a new planning director in place, and then there is a new process for the UDO updates. I'll run through that very quickly, and then I'll go back over there. So you'll see now that all of the UDO updates are actually on the discussion. For the ones that have been backwards processed, we had it on the action items. They're now shifted to discussion. So when you first see them, they will be on discussion going forward. And then the following month, they will be on action item. And then the following month after that, if approved, would go to the BOC. In between the two planning board meetings, there will be a comment session for the development community. And then also a potential meeting, kind of like the coffee thing that we're doing tomorrow with me, where they can come ask me direct questions. So this gives them a longer period for comments for the public, and then twice that you see it. So you have a time to review it and a time to actually vote on it, and then further to get it to the Board of Commissioners. So that is the new process going forward. So you will see it twice before it actually passes through. Went up. Any other?
Question. Did I hear you correctly when you said if it wasn't approved here at the planning board, that
Go back, we would work on it.
we'll go back going forward?
Yes.
Okay.
So that means we will vote on it twice, or do we just say it twice?
You will see it twice, vote on it once.
Only vote on it once, okay.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to our public comment period. Before we go into it, I'd just like to state, please, when you come up, state your name and address at the start of your comments. There is a time limit of 3 minutes, which will be displayed on the screen in the interest of time and fairness. It is the board's policy not to respond directly to comments during this period. Staff will follow up as appropriate. Any speaker with handouts shall be given to the town clerk and will be distributed to the board at the conclusion of the meeting. First up, we have Robbie Oldham.
Good evening, Robbie Odom, 55 Grant Drive, Pittsboro. I think May just addressed my comment, but I'll read my statement anyway, because we've been working closely with staff on some of the upcoming changes to the engineering standards and the text amendments. So my name is Robbie Odom, Weathers Ravenel, office address 55 Grant Drive here in Pittsboro. I'm a professional civil engineer with 30 years of land development experience in North Carolina and 20 years in Pittsboro. I'll be quick and say that we understand the town is going through a process to update their engineering standards and UDO on several fronts, which may seem minor, but based on initial review, some are significant and clearly outside of industry standards. We understand from a meeting just last week with Ms. May, Ms. Armstrong, that the town is considering stakeholder meetings with the development community to discuss and allow feedback from design professionals before these proposed changes are presented to you and the Board of Commissioners. We think this is a great idea, and we welcome the opportunity to work with you and with staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jody Lightoff.
Good evening. My name is Jody Lightoff. I live at 481 Bennett Mountain Trace, and I work with Edward Holmes and the Holmes Partnership on all our land holdings in Pittsboro. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Echoing Robbie's sentiment, I'm looking forward, really heartened by Ms. Armstrong's announcement tonight that she's going to open up the discussions and be a bit more public about the updates and refinements to the UDO. I think collaboration is always the right answer. 40 years, town planning, landscape architecture, working nationally, internationally, working with some of the best architects in the world. Collaboration is always key. And for me, it's that integration of the urban systems and the natural systems that build great places. And I think that's what we're all hopeful for Pittsboro, is building great places. And how do we interlock those things and make sure they're work well for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and we have Nicholas Robinson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, planning board members, staff. My name is Nick Robinson, and I practice law here in Pittsboro, 128 Hillsborough Street, 27312. My law partner and I have been handling land use and zoning cases, subdivision cases here in Pittsboro for about 30 years. I've handled cases in multiple jurisdictions in Piedmont, but the vast majority of them have been in Chatham County or in Pittsboro. And we have, I'm very glad to hear, and it's the first time I'm hearing about the new process for review of UDO amendments, but that is what I want to talk about also. I'm glad, I do think that more input from the development community is going to be necessary. But I also would like for you all to consider something different, an approach that can enfold the new process that Ms. Armstrong's talking about. And that is that, first of all, it's not unusual to see one or maybe two UDO amendments over the course of a year when specific individualized corrections are needed or to fix a hole in the ordinance. But it is really unusual to see a series of separate UDO text amendments being brought through a disconnected, non-comprehensive fashion as we've seen here in Pittsboro lately. Quick review of the agendas for this planning board show a total of 14 proposed UDO amendments in the last 8 months or so, and 12 of them being proposed in the last 4 months. And you all know this. That's a rate of about 36 amendments in a year. And that's completely unprecedented in my experience. And by its very nature, if we keep going at this rate, it's going to create some unintended consequences. The UDO is over 300 pages long, as you know. It contains over 31 single-spaced pages of definitions alone. There are 531 different defined terms, many of which are interrelated and appear throughout those 300 pages. So when you change one thing, you often need to think about all the other related amendments that have to go on to make it consistent. And that is a painstaking process that should be done carefully and methodically, not in a piecemeal basis. And so there are consultant firms that should be hired who do nothing but help municipalities and counties like ours do this exact thing. Take a UDO that needs to be molded and fixed in a holistic way. And the second thing is that we took a look at the 3 UDO amendments that are on the agenda tonight for discussion, which is great: stormwater, infrastructure, and conservation subdivision provisions. And each one of those is a highly technical and requires input of engineers and attorneys and land planners. I'm really glad to hear that there's a planning director that's coming. I think you should pause and let the planning director take a look at all of this as well. But it's unreasonable, I think, to ask you all to expect to be able to internalize all of these technical kind of changes and their implications at a rushed pace. So speaking on behalf of many in the development community, we respectfully request that you recommend, or at least talk about recommending that the Board of Commissioners table all of the proposed amendments temporarily, just to give the town a chance to do this the right, cautious, and time-honored way, which is to hire professional consultants to help make the revisions be comprehensive and workable. I do have additional comments on the other UDO amendments, but I think that it sounds like we're going to be given a chance to do that at another time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That will conclude our public comment. And we will move to our first action item. Rezoning request PB 26225 Hydrotube.
Good evening.
Doing well.
I am going to talk about a general use rezoning case, PB 26225, or otherwise known as Hydrotube. And per section 10.4.12 of the UDO, the intent of a general use rezoning is to amend a zoning map to reclassify land or property to a base zoning district that already exists, where all future development on that land and on that property is subject to all of the development regulations applicable to that proposed base zoning district. Subject property is approximately 5.9 acres, and it's located north and east of Powell Place subdivision and to the west of Highway 15501. The property is currently vacant and vegetated with existing concrete pads and some asphalt LC. The property is also considered a brownfield due to previous use as an industrial manufacturing facility. Sorry.
Does the clicker work?
I am clicking. No. Thank you. I appreciate it. Might be new and also old. Okay, so back to slide 3. The property is currently zoned M2, which is your heavy industrial district. The adjacent zoning districts to the north, west, and south are mixed-use plan developments, which is the Powell Place subdivision. And then across the highway to the east, you have highway commercial C2, a couple R12, which is your medium density residential, and then you also have the beginning of another mixed-use plan development, which is the Cooper subdivision, I believe.
Was read.
Yes. All right, and the applicant is proposing to rezone property to highway commercial C2. Your Pittsburgh land use map classifies the subject property as employment mixed use within the mixed use activity center. Also, the proposed rezoning to C2 is consistent with this land use classification in the overlay. So to reiterate, the applicant conducted a community information meeting on April 16th, 2026, and the report is attached in your packet that you received. And as previously mentioned, the proposed rezoning would amend the subject property from your M2 to your C2 district. And so all the principal and accessory uses per sections 3.2.4 and 3.3.4 of the use tables in the UDO are applicable to any development that would happen on this property. Your highway commercial is intended to accommodate retail, office, service areas, and development that's allowed to include a mix of retail, office, eating, entertainment, medical, vehicle sales, and service uses that serve community needs. And this is consistent with your employment mixed use classification of your Pittsburgh land use map. And so staff recommends approval of the general use rezoning, case PB 26225. Hydrotube as proposed by the applicant. If you have any questions, I can answer them now. But there's also an applicant presentation and I'll be available to answer questions afterwards as well.
Thank you.
Biggest question I've got, entrance and exit, where will that be located?
That's not really a rezoning,
Understand, but that's also,
but it's not really a rezoning. We're looking at a rezoning and not a plan right now. So for one, I don't know that you could really answer that yet, but also that shouldn't have any bearing on the rezoning of the parcel.
right, but interested for the sake of traffic safety.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good evening. My name is Jody Lightoff, 481 Bennett Mountain Trace, and you recognize I work with the Holmes family. The Hydrotube site is, and some of you and older, in the history of Pittsburgh, it used originally known as the Kepco site. So it used to be a hydraulic fitting manufacturer, and they had test pits there. 5.98 acres. We were able to reacquire it. If you look through the package, you'll see the name of the entity is Third Time Around LLC. So this is the third time that the family has owned this piece of property. And it was actually, it was a kind of a strategic reacquisition of this property, mainly because of Powell Place. We have the 27 acres of Powell Place that's undeveloped. Powell Place was a 2003 MUPD that is pushing to do a mixed-use village there. And, we went through, I think 2 years ago to kind of realign the MUPD to get a few more residentials. And so Hydrotube site, as we envision it, taking it from a heavy industrial use, an M2 to a commercial, aligns with that mixed use village notion of what Powell Place Lane has to offer in the existing context of the site. So that's the beef. Back again, aligns with land use planning act. And then this just kind of shows, Mary Hayes, Barbara Holmes Park, the 10 acres there, how the Hydrotube site fits within the context of Powell Place. And then enlargement, currently to date, it's just parking lots, the old building pad, and towards the west, the old loading docks, bollards. There's streetlights are still there, the poles are still there, the stanchions are still there. We did go in and clean up that parking. And you can see the existing drive aisle that accesses from 15501 on this site plan right now. Just a little bit of history, 1979, you can see the development of the Kepco site. So 46 years ago, this was the one industrial site. I shouldn't say one industrial, but this was an industrial site. Pittsburgh, as you can see, this was prior to the bypass, prior to Mosaic, prior to Northwood Landing, prior to Powell Place. And so what we've seen is kind of the town grow around this site, and it's been sort of a remnant site, hence leading to the idea of updating the land use to be more compatible with current land uses. And again, you can see the building in 2007, and then by 2009, the building was torn down. So for 17 years, there's been no activity on this site. And so we were able to kind of repurchase it. And, you know, part of this is when it was in a separate ownership, there was a spike strip that runs along Powell Place Lane. It's like a 30-foot wide strip that wouldn't allow access. The only access for the site would have been 15501. And now that it's in the same ownership, we have the ability to look at other access points and disperse traffic and move traffic accordingly. And I'm glad to answer any questions. Oh, I did, one of the things I did do, and, you know, working with Elizabeth's been terrific. Going through the land use chart, you know, of what's allowed. And it was kind of interesting with the M2 and the C2. There's actually 26 land use category or 27 categories that are similar. So you could do 27, whether it was an M2 or C2. And I think the key ones that we've looked at, and the reason why we're going to this, requesting the C2 is really the retail uses, the medical office, and getting a little bit more diversity to help kind of do some placemaking and get more services that are aligned towards the vision of Powell Place.
It's probably too early, but do you have any specific ideas about what kinds of places?
No, this is all, you know, our purchase of the property, filing for the brownfield application, getting it going. It's been so early that we haven't really tested it in the market yet. So in our minds, because of the work we've been doing on Powell Place Lane and trying to create that walkable environment and try to get the associated land use, we just wanted to kind of pre-position the zoning so that the market would know, you know, that takes one less layer out of, in case there's a user that says we need to be here sooner than later, just kind of cleans up that process and helps make it shovel ready.
I had a question about the brownfields part. So I'm not really familiar with that. So I think I saw in the packet that it said like there's some restrictions on what can be built based on brownfields.
So what's interesting under C2, you know, we could do almost the full range of housing typology, but under the EPA, the NCDEQ brownfield program, we're not allowed to do residential. And a lot of it is, we've been out there monitoring the groundwater for a year now. So we've got probes all over that site, testing it and reporting back to EPA. And it's really kind of the vapor coming up. And so in order to, if we were to construct a building, we'd have to basically build a wrestling mat underneath the building foundation to keep the vapors coming up. So really it's a limitation on no residential uses.
It's primary.
Primary, yeah.
And then in terms of I think I'm understanding it correctly that this would be the C2 rather than the MUP. Is that right?
Yes, it's
Is that
the straight C2 instead of the MUPD that is a Powell Place.
and the reason for, and just so I can make sure I understand, the reason for that is the brownfields part, or is it or it just widens what you can do with it?
It was a little bit, and it just feels cleaner to go to C2 than trying to merge that back into Powell Place. Powell Place was entitled, I think it's over 350,000 square feet of non-residential use, plus 2 hotels that we can still do there. So that program, plus we have 150 homes that we can still build at Powell Place. So that program felt full. And so knowing that we have control of both properties, access, tie-ins, shared drives, streetscapes, sidewalks, all that connectivity will happen. So the C2 in our minds and just talking with everybody felt cleaner.
Then sorry, guys, my last question is I know you said that there's, the usage for the MUPD versus the C2, there's 27 similar
I'm
categories.
sorry to clarify that, that was the M2.
M2.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Then M2 is not what it's currently, right? Or
No, M2 is what it is currently.
currently, and
M2.
the difference between C2 and M2 is the 27, or the similar things are the 27.
Similar, except with, you're going from the industrial use to commercial use. So you get the retail and healthcare and urgent care, greenhouse nurseries. So you get more flexibility in those actual services you would expect in kind of vehicular nature of 15501.
And just to complete my loop, last part is just the difference, again, between the C2 and the MUPD is just that residential part of it.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Within C2, do you have an idea of what percentage of the builds are permitted to be residential?
In the C2?
Yeah.
So in our C2, so I'll take it in two ways. From the actual UDO, we could do all residential if we wanted to in a C2, but due to the brownfield designation, no residential will be allowed in C2
Okay,
on this site. So take that 6 acres and say no residential
got it.
based upon, which, you know, and there's another use would be like a daycare. We wouldn't put a daycare there. You know, there's a daycare that's going to be constructed on Old Rock Spring Cemetery Road. So there's one nearby. So I think it will be geared a little bit more to the retail office uses.
Okay, great.
Anything else?
The community meeting that was held where no one attended, was there only the one invitee, the adjacent property owner, which is the applicant and?
No, we worked with the town. You have to do all the adjacencies. So you know, with the with 64 coming through, so the McDonald's across the street, we had to notify the owners that own the undeveloped lands next up. The Waffle House, you know, we had to invite everybody and so.
It sounds like it mostly went to commercial properties.
Right, like Sherwin-Williams just elected not to show up.
Cool.
And AutoZone didn't feel like coming. The dialysis people didn't feel like coming, so.
I want to make sure that it wasn't like some residents of Powell Place ignoring but I understand it's like the adjacent properties.
It's the immediate adjacency, so
Cool.
like. But we did send a letter to like the Powell Place HOA, right? You're still involved on the HOA board. Yeah.
Thank you, Jody. Does anybody have any other questions before we look for a motion?
make a motion will approve
All right, I got a,
62.
all right, a motion to recommend approval from Alfreda,
I'll second.
second from Charity. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is a unanimous recommendation of approval for the rezoning case PB 26225. And we'll move on to our next item, text amendment request ZTA 2026-12 Downtown Overlay District. Do handouts apply to staff members too?
Evening Chair and members of the Planning Board. Teresa Thompson, Downtown Development Director. For those who may not know me in my current role, I wanted to begin with a little background before getting into the request. It's been several months since I presented to y'all. Last time I was regularly presenting, I was serving as the Assistant Planning Director. At that time, most of my work involved major subdivisions, proposed rezonings, general text amendments, and larger planning projects such as the Chatham Park Small Area Plan. Did y'all remember that one?
No, not at all.
And since then, my role has shifted, still housed under the Development Services Department, but I'm now the town's Downtown Development Director. So rather than primarily reviewing new development applications, my work is now focused more on preserving and strengthening our existing downtown community, while ensuring that new growth complements what's already making Pittsboro special. That includes supporting existing businesses, understanding how new development impacts downtown, identifying ways to mitigate any potential negative impacts, advancing the downtown economic vitality, and working collaboratively with businesses, property owners, residents, the Downtown Advisory Board, additional downtown development service staff, and that's all on short and long range downtown initiatives. So one important change is that downtown projects are now coordinated through the Downtown Division, which again falls under the Development Services Department, allowing the Downtown Advisory Board to become involved early in the process. And is everyone aware of the Downtown Advisory Board? It's another advisory board with the town. Okay.
If you could clarify the intended purpose and what their goals are, it would be great, because I've heard of it, but I don't know what they do.
Sure. I'll get to that a little more on what the program is that we are based under. But generally what we're trying to accomplish is having the advisory board be involved early on in any sort of downtown projects, and especially where it involves big, like conditional rezonings, having the applicant come to speak to them early on. We do currently have one proposed conditional rezoning that the applicant has been to the Downtown Advisory Board twice. They're looking to officially apply in the next month or so. So just getting that early on interaction with the Downtown Advisory Board, which is an 18-member board, a lot larger than Planning Board, and represents downtown business owners, property owners, community members. We also have 7 ex officio members that represent different organizations in town, such as the Chamber of Commerce, EDC, Historical Association. We also have a high school student. So just trying to include a very diverse and applicable type of oversight to what's going on downtown. So having worked for the town for 6 years, this is the first opportunity we've had to dedicate a staff person exclusively to our downtown community. This is an important balance, I think, as we all agree. Downtown deserves the same level of planning and attention as all of our new growth areas. So just an overview of the program, as Christina was asking. So we're currently a accredited North Carolina Main Street community. When the program started, we became an affiliated program. The second year, we became accredited last year. And then in addition to that, we were the highest scored accredited program in the entire state for our program. So we've been doing lots of work getting to where we are now. And we're hoping this year is going to be really focused on implementation of a lot of the discussions we've had over the past couple of years, including hiring an additional staff person. So our program follows the nationally recognized Main Street 4-point approach that includes 4 elements being organization, promotions, design, and economic vitality. So everything we do falls within one of these 4 categories. And the work plan, which I passed out to you guys, that was adopted by the Board of Commissioners. So every work plan that we have for each fiscal year has to be approved by the Downtown Advisory Board and the Town Board. And that became effective on July 1st. And you'll notice that many of the projects are marked carryover. That's just because a lot of these initiatives we started last fiscal year and we just couldn't finish it. So we're going to work on all that until it's done, and then we'll add more projects as we have the capacity for it. So tonight's request is one of those approved work plan projects. So anything that we do, you'll see it in that approved work plan. So tonight it implements Economic Vitality Project, which is the red color. Number 1, review Unified Development Ordinance standards for downtown. So phase 1 of that project focuses specifically on the downtown overlay district. And just to preface, this was not a quick review. There's the downtown advisory board, 3 committees, and then several teams. So the team that worked specifically on this item has been meeting for about a year, and they're called the Downtown Dream Team. We have all, fun names for all the teams. And a team is basically a temporary working group. They fall under one of those categories, so this one being economic vitality, and specifically researching the downtown overlay district. That has been an initiative going on at least 9 months. So the feedback that was collected by the team then went to the Economic Vitality Committee and the Pittsburgh Downtown Advisory Board, we call it PDAB for short. We coordinated with additional development services department staff and reviewed and met with the town attorney before coming to you tonight. So just wanted to preface all that tonight's not really just about presenting one text amendment. It's really one piece of a much larger long-term effort to modernize downtown regulations and coordination. So looking ahead, you'll see that there's additional work plan items. So expect to see me a few more times for those, including proposed mixed-use zoning incentives for the downtown and downtown support areas that are identified in the Pittsburgh Land Use Plan, updates to, or potential updates to downtown commercial design standards, and a few other downtown-related text amendments that are being looked at and vetted through the Dream Team. So any other questions regarding the program before digging into the actual item? Okay. And thank you for letting me explain that to you. Hopefully I didn't take too long. So let's go to the last exhibit, please. Okay. We divided this into 5 overall sections. So, and that was included in your memo where you can see it numbered 1 through 5. So starting with number 1, we are replacing references in the UDO where you see it at the bottom of the screen. Currently, the UDO references the Main Street Pittsboro boundary. That is referencing the program boundary, which is different than the regulatory boundary. So we just strike that and then added downtown overlay district for clarification. Part of what we were trying to do with this amendment is just make it easier for property owners, applicants, staff, and decision makers in the future to cut down on confusion in the language. Secondly, if you want to go to the next page, please. Oh, where the map is. Go. Keep going up. All right, right there. So we simply just wanted to add the actual boundary map into the UDO. Currently, if someone wanted to see where the boundary is, they would have to search it or call the department. And we wanted to make it easy for everybody to see it. So we just placed it right into the UDO. So the second one, again, is just for creating clarity. Well, you can keep scrolling down for another minute and then we'll go to the colorful map. All right, so here's our prohibited use table. That is basically what makes up the downtown overlay district. And right there is good. So the third item is removing game rooms from the prohibited use table. So when in the UDO, it was, as you know, it was adopted in 2022. the downtown overlay district language was originally written in 2018, and it was housed under the former zoning ordinance. So when the UDO was adopted in 2022, the consulting group at the time basically just copied and pasted the existing language into the UDO without updating it to actually make sure it fits with the new UDO terminology and definitions. So with the team looking at this, we looked at every use in the prohibited use table, and we compared that to all the other uses currently in the UDO. In this case, game rooms, that created confusion for a couple of reasons. One is because in the UDO, we also have a use called indoor private recreation and entertainment facilities. And I included that definition. I think it's like the very end of the ordinance, just for reference, not to change it. But you can see it in your packets. If you want us to put it on the screen, we can. But that definition already includes arcades, billiards, darts, bowling alleys, and similar uses. So the dream team, going all the way up to PDAB, agreed that we want those kind of uses downtown. And we want to clarify that that's not the concern. Game rooms contradicted with the new UDO term. So just to make it simple, we took out game rooms, and everything that we liked from the game rooms is still included in the definition for the private recreation. Does that make sense?
I think that actually answers the question. I was going to ask what we were defining as game rooms, and then I noticed the electronic gaming operation, I think, is probably the definition of all the things that I wouldn't have wanted to be included.
That was my second point, is we wanted to clarify between gaming rooms and electronic gaming and sweepstakes. So that was left into the prohibited use table. We do not want that downtown. I don't think anybody would. We also updated the language because, again, that language was not specifically looked at from a downtown perspective. So that's in your ordinance as well, if you'd like to look at. But we updated the definition to clarify exactly what it means and that it's prohibited. Okay. So item number 4, if you want to scroll down to the next page. Right there. Yep. So this was by far the most extensively discussed portion of the project. It wasn't the intent from the beginning. Originally, it was just to look through the downtown overlay district. And as we started discussing tattoo parlors, it pretty much took up the conversation for at least a few months. So some of you, I think at least one of you was on the planning board. You were in 2023 too? Okay. So y'all were here when this came before you originally in 2023. The request was initiated by an individual applicant, and she was seeking to allow a tattoo studio downtown. So it was someone that actually applied for it. And at the time, the staff proposed having a 300-foot separation requirement between tattoo parlors, and then also just limiting it to the second story downtown. So following discussion, the planning board tabled the request, and the applicant just never came back. So they didn't try to update again, and they ended up moving to a different town. So tonight's proposal is different from that. And so rather than just responding to an individual applicant, like I said, this proposal is coming out of 9+ months of research and community discussion through the Dream Team, Economic Vitality Committee, and PDAB. That also included, as I stated, downtown service department staff and town attorney. Again, as all part of the adopted downtown work plan. So the conversation became much broader than simply just asking, should we have tattoos or not? When it was discussed on the benefits of having tattoo parlors, then the question came up, what standards would best preserve the historic character of downtown while supporting this entrepreneurship opportunity? So the Dream Team recognized tattoo studios in general, and this was stated many times, that they're increasingly considered creative small businesses that often complement art districts and downtown environments. If you're familiar with other downtowns, most of them in the state allow them by right, everywhere, including downtown historic districts. So understanding that, but then also at the same time, agreeing that there's still a strong consensus on Pittsburgh's historic core being protected, and that might cause some tension with allowing tattoo parlors right in the historic core. The team and staff combined came up with proposed standards. And they differ significantly from the 2023 text amendment that y'all saw. So now going to the colorful zoning map. And the colors are kind of hard to see there, but they should be in as well. So the first standard is that within the district, which you can see the boundary, can you see the boundary on the map? Tattoo parlors would be limited to just the parcels that are zoned highway commercial, the C2 district within the boundary. And so those are the pink colors. And as you can see, the pink colors are on the outside portions of the downtown overlay district. Secondly, we're proposing a separation of 1,000 feet, not just 300 feet. So 1,000 feet from one tattoo parlor to another. And if you, for scale, one block is about 500 feet. So you would not have one in the middle, basically historic Hillsborough Street. It would only be possible on the exterior. That also includes measuring from tattoo parlors located outside the boundary. So, 3 months from now, one decides to open on Sanford Road outside the boundary, then we would measure 1,000 feet from there as well. We also propose limiting the signage that's permitted. So as you can see, it's pretty regulated there for sure. The goal being not to have it kind of like in your face, that, tattoo parlor, especially from the major corridors in downtown, which are also included in your packet. And prohibiting any entrances or any sort of visible activity indoors or outdoors from any of those designated streets as well. Lastly, limiting the operational hours from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And you typically don't see hours of operations with uses, but that was a concern that was raised, was, the typical, view of tattoo parlors in the past where they stay up, all night, which that's certainly not the norm today, for sure. So any questions on that piece? All right. And then the last,
Some questions.
yeah.
I'm having trouble with the two different pinks on the map. One is highway commercial and one is high density residential, and they're right next to each other, I think.
Yes.
So it looks like we're saying, you're proposing that there not be any tattoo parlors in the center of town, in the green area.
Correct.
Yeah. But they would be okay with the restrictions in the pink areas closest to town. I'm concerned that those areas, if they're not okay in the middle of town, why are they okay in the edge of town where they butt up against high density residential? I'm thinking particularly about the area on Sanford Road where you're going to have school kids from Horton School walking to town. How do the people on this advisory committee represent those surrounding areas, or do they just represent the downtown area? And do the people in the outskirts, those traditional neighborhoods that are just outside the downtown area, have those people been involved in this process at all?
Okay, does this work where I can point? Like a red dot or anything? Okay. Okay, so within, I'm sorry. Do you want me to come around on this side?
No, it's fine.
So within the overlay district, as far as, yes, there are no residential pinks in here. It's all C2. This is all,
What about on the far right?
so the only residential districts, the lighter pink,
Yeah.
here, here, not here.
That looks like lighter pink to me, that middle block.
This one right here,
That one looks dark, but yeah, but right there where that
it's
section looks like.
It's not. So everything on East Street is C2. Now down here, you can kind of see it a little bit, and this is we'll have to ask for the colors to be updated because it's very close. So if you see this little like point here, everything south of that is residential, but all of this is C2. And also, tattoo parlors are allowed in Pittsburgh anywhere. So in any C2 district. So again, they're already allowed here. If someone wanted to open today or, they submit their application, they can do it. But within the overlay district, that should not be a concern with being, close to these residential districts.
Okay.
Next time we'll ask to see if the colors can be updated because it is a little confusing. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions regarding that part? Okay, and then the last item is definitions. So we updated proposed updating several definitions. We talked about electronic gaming already, but we also included flea markets, pawn shops, and shooting galleries. So overall, we think the revisions improve the consistency and clarity throughout the UDO. It's going to help make staff level decisions much easier to interpret, and it's going to give a lot more direction for applicants and property owners moving forward as well. So I've already mentioned this a few times, but at its June 2nd meeting, the Pittsburgh Downtown Advisory Board unanimously recommended approval of all of these amendments. Specifically, the board supported clarifying prohibited use definitions, permitting tattoo studios within the outer portions of the downtown overlay district, protecting the historic core surrounding Hillsborough Street, and adopting the proposed separation signage and visibility standards. Development service staff also recommends approval of the proposed amendments. We think it's a way to improve ordinance clarity while expanding opportunities to small businesses in a manner that preserves the character of downtown Pittsburgh. So thank you, and please let me know if you have any questions.
I had a quick clarifying question. You said in the beginning that this board or this group of people, I can't remember if you said it's a board or whatever, but you know what I'm talking about, that they would see some zoning requests coming before them?
You will.
We will.
Yes, going through the process right now, it's still in discussion and research phase.
With that group.
It's several groups of people, but yes, ma'am.
So they don't have, so I just want to clarify in my own brain, that's not that they have the authority to change the zoning request. It's just it's like an advisory, like, look at what we're thinking about doing. What do you guys think? You people who are actively involved in your community.
Yes.
Okay,
This
cool.
all falls under the downtown program. So if you think about starting from the bottom, we have the worker bees, which are the informal working groups called teams. They kind of get in the nitty gritty, because the committees and the advisory board, they only meet 1 hour a month. There's no time for this kind of level discussion. So the teams, and by the way, the teams are mostly made up of committee and advisory board members, but it's open to the public. So if you look at that work plan and there's any item in particular that you find interesting, just let me know and we can get you to work on it for sure. Yeah. And then they take their feedback, because the teams don't speak for downtown at all. They don't go around town saying this is what we're doing or anything like that. But they take their feedback then to the committee that it falls under, which you can see in the work plan hierarchy. The committee then reviews it, ultimately making a recommendation to then an advisory board whose only power is then to make a recommendation. So no decision-making powers at all within any of the levels. And then from there, it either goes to y'all, depending on what it is, or to the town board for final decision.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, the definitions, the electronic gaming operations, flea market, pawn shop, and shooting gallery, those are still on the prohibited list, but you're just defining
Correct.
them.
Correct.
Okay, so the way this stands right now, then a tattoo studio could be located within the downtown overlay district to the east of Masonic Street.
That's how I'm understanding it. Well, to the east, right?
Yeah,
Yes, okay, I was thinking of Fayetteville Street, excuse me. Yes, sir.
okay, to the east of Masonic, and then what areas to the west of Fayette, is it Fayette Street? Yeah, Fayette Street, would it?
Would it be helpful?
Right now, it would be these areas in the pink. I'm on the screen, sorry.
Okay, only the areas that are in the pink, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, and then that one square up above Thompson Street, the corner of Thompson and Masonic. Now that's also pink. So one could be located there
It
also.
would have to be located farther back from Thompson Street, because Thompson Street is identified as a designated street.
Okay, so it would have.
So it can't front Thompson,
Okay,
front Masonic.
all right.
But as there is redevelopment in the future, there could be something there. And I failed to mention, we have two of our team members here tonight that they are also not, oh wait, one left. There's one left. Okay, Shannon. So Shannon's on our dream team. He's also the chair of the Economic Vitality Committee, and he's on the Downtown Advisory Board.
That was a lot. Is there anything else that either questions or just anything that anyone would like to discuss before we look for a motion? No?
Yep.
All right, well, then in that case, I'll accept a motion.
Motion to adopt the ordinance. Is that what the words are? Sorry.
Mhm.
Yep, okay.
You're right.
Motion to adopt the ordinance amending the Town of Pittsburgh Unified Development Ordinance ZTA 2026-1. Yes, to approve.
Second that.
All right. Motion by Christina Piard, second by Elfrida Alston. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, I think that was unanimous recommendation of approval. Cool. Whoa. And that concludes our action items. So we will move on to discussion items. ZTA 2026-07 Stormwater. Amendment discussion. Yes.
So sorry, I neglected to mention, we had 3 members here tonight. So Jody Lightoff is also on our dream team and Economic Vitality. Thank you. to Jody as well.
Okay. Ms. May, what do you got for us?
All right, I'm gonna give a brief history on the UDO a little bit to clear up a couple confusion items. So originally, the UDO was approved in May of 2021, and it was actually approved with a list of UDO items that the Board of Commissioners thought needed to be corrected. That list was significant, and it is pages and pages long. The items that we're bringing right now are brought in set, but to clear up a lot of those issues are actually embedded in these changes. So that original UDO was written by an outside firm. It was not written by the town, and it still had significant issues. We are addressing those issues as directed by the board during that time period when it was approved. The additional items that we're finding along the way are being brought with these items to make sure it is done appropriately. We have multiple planners, engineers, cross-departmental weighing in. We have a contract lawyer that's reviewing it, our town lawyer is reviewing it, administrative staff's reviewing it. I'm looking at it. I have even reached out to members of APA to actually look at very specific items to make sure we're where we need to be. There are some items that are newer that will raise eyebrows, and that's why we're asking the community to actually look at some of those items. Some of those are in reference to failures or to issues that we've had as the town, both maintaining items and or have they been brought to the boards before. So, and then of course, anything that is emerging needs of the community. So we take it all very seriously. I will tell you that the three that you're seeing right now have been in the works since February. So we didn't bring every single time they've been updated. No, it is a constant ongoing. We've found modifications. We tried simple versions, but we recognize there are other areas that need to be updated. So they've been pushed out, and we check, we do define all the way through the document to make sure that those overlaps are taken care of. And then there are other pieces that will come later, but if we do a huge giant update at one time, it would be overwhelming. So yes, we're doing them 2 or 3 at a time to try to keep it where it's reasonable, and we make sure we check for the overlaps. This is also a reason we're trying to add this discussion piece. So right now, if somebody sees the flag or an issue is brought to our attention, that when we go talk to the community, we figure out a way to address that item now instead of later. And then she's also got the heavy background from being in the private side and writing the UDO just like I do. So 2 different standpoints. Mine's my environmental side, hers is all the other pieces. We've got a good overlap. But we're leaving that with the town, making sure that we are checking things because we're the ones that have to maintain it. We're the ones that have to answer to it. This is that opportunity to make sure everybody is involved. So I'm going to let her lead through each individual item, and I will be helping as necessary.
Quick question about the public comment.
Mhm.
I think you mentioned in the beginning of this session, can you remind me again when those public comments are happening?
So they will start tomorrow.
Okay.
We want to see, make sure that you don't have anything that we might be missing that you would automatically see. And then we will open it up tomorrow, and then I will schedule a development community meeting with the developers, and anyone who wants to join it will be able to do so. I will send out an email, and then it will be posted when that meeting is, and it will be probably in downstairs on the town hall in the bottom one. So we'll get that set up for that specific timeline. If I need to have a second one between now and the next planning board meeting, we'll do that as well, depending on how that goes. And we will get it in place to come back here then.
The developer meeting will be open to the public?
Yes.
And will we be included on the list of people who get informed about it, or what?
So yes,
I think that would be nice.
and we'll do that.
Okay.
Anything else before we get started?
Good evening again. The first thing we're going to walk through is stormwater, and this is just amending some sections that are already there, just so they're in better alignment. State. And these are requirements regardless of if they're in our UDO. However, it's good practice to have clues where to look for developers. So we reference in the design manual the state minimum design criteria, and so that's state stormwater rules, and just a nod to the Pittsburgh Stormwater Program Administrator that these are rules and regulations that are outside of the UDO, but it's just saying that in the UDO, you should definitely look at these rules before going forward. And then starting with the admin and procedures, C2 is new. It's the stormwater impact analysis. So that's right in the middle of established text already, so it kind of knocks all of the lists down. But this is just to say that we want to understand the impacts on stormwater for proposed development there that's coming in.
Sorry, are you saying that we didn't previously require an SIA?
On this form, no. It was generalized and pieces of a document instead of actually one solid document.
Okay, interesting.
I've got, yeah, one question on that paragraph. So where it says a stormwater impact analysis shall be required to be approved in advance of site plan approval when appropriate thresholds on development are reached. I'm not sure that I have any context as far as what an appropriate threshold on development is.
So the appropriate would be the 24-25% when that overlap for a major stormwater, for that full stormwater impact analysis. You can do LID and lower versions of a full stormwater impact than you can in the larger setting. So that would be that threshold. Because you wouldn't need full SEMs if you do not have all the curb and gutter and you're not using the full spectrum of the stormwater piece. So you hit that crossover.
Okay, so that's 24 to what percentage?
24-25%.
Okay.
You would ask when you get to about 24 why, and then there's an outline in the specs and in the administrative manual, what should be in that SIA. This
Okay.
is the what that should be the actual process for that, and what that looks like is actually in a separate document, because we don't want to put all that in here in the UDO. We just want to say, this is the document you're using, and this is what appropriate, here's where it is.
So I guess my question is, why would that not be put in there as definitive criteria rather than saying appropriate threshold?
Well, to be fair, it doesn't say appropriate. It says want specific development thresholds. I'm sorry, are we looking at, I might be looking at something else.
I'm looking at the
Number 2.
C2.
First sentence.
C2. 4.4.
Also says before site plan approval, want specific development threshold.
I think we're looking at different, he's looking at Exhibit A.
Oh, sorry.
That's where we're at, right? Exhibit A? Okay. So I guess why would we not put in there the 24-25% rather than calling it a appropriate threshold, which,
You can put that directly in there. It's a good idea.
I mean, that's.
Or at least a reference point, like, go like see this document over here. Does that get updated regularly, or like, would that number change over time, or not really?
It will be based on either the permit or specific items as required by the state, if it ever changes.
So you're just saying you want to say this is where the reference point is for the number?
I think that would make
appropriate.
it easier to
Yeah.
understand, yeah.
Cool.
Added 2 more standards. We're looking at J5 and J6. This is talking about diffuse flow and stream piping. These are technical, however, they're just to make sure that downstream flooding and erosion are properly managed and mitigated. And I believe L1 and 2 are new. Oh,
Going back, and you probably gotta slap me for this, but anyway. So in item 3 under number 5, diffuse flow,
yes.
where it says stormwater SCMs, isn't that saying it double, isn't it,
Stormwater measures, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just catch that stuff.
No, that's good. That's why we're subject.
I'll defend you if anyone tries to slap you, okay?
Okay.
Get
thanks.
off.
Appreciate that.
You may appreciate it.
And then in number 6, after that first comma where it says, and shall approved as required, should that be and shall be approved as required?
Yes.
Okay.
So then maintenance 3.1 or L 1 and 2 is about ownership and responsibility and design and construction standards. So who is maintaining those and their responsibilities. And so we reference the town specification and standards, just so if those need to be updated, we don't have to go through the whole formal process of updating the UDO to tell developers where to look.
I don't want to open up a can of worms here, but I just, what do we have in place to make sure that those SCMs are being taken care of and are functional?
That is actually part of the process update in the specs, because there's supposed to be a schedule when they're supposed to be monitored and checked, and it should be yearly. And there should be reports given to the town. So part of that is that piece of the update in the specs specifically.
And then venturing all the way down to S, 1, 2, and 3 are new. 1 is not new, but we categorize all of the maintenance easements. So 2 and 3 are new. And that required us to also label 1. And so this is just some processes and requirements for access easements so that you can access stormwater control measures and that there's adequate criteria in place.
And number 2, my only question is I've been conceptually trying to figure out why is there a minimum 25-foot buffer, given that an adjoining parcel of street or railroad has a right of way less than 50 feet.
The way that the stormwater piece is supposed to be, it's supposed to be a minimum of 10 feet, but usually when you're right up against another parcel, there's going to have an overlap. If it's a utility, then you're going to have a height requirement, and generally is 20, 25 feet. So those two side by side, and then the rail, there's also usually an additional. So it's taken into account all 3 of those at one time. So that would be the 25-foot.
Okay.
If there are questions or discussions.
I really appreciate the work y'all put into this.
Yes. Thank you so much. Does anyone have anything else like to discuss concerning item number 9.1 here? All right. In that case, move on to ZTA 2026-10, structure improvements and acceptance.
Just to give some history and background of this one, was started as just update to the consistency statement and the comprehensive plan overlap, because there were errors in what it actually called out. The definitions were incomplete, and then there was no direct tie to what infrastructure and transportation fully entailed and how it was. And there's also the issue of de facto to the SIA, which is a subdivision infrastructure agreement. And that is not a standard term. It was used without it being the UDO process in place. So we went to the board with the original version, and we had already outlined the transportation and infrastructure section to follow later. We were going to use one paragraph to relate it to that, but due to concerns with that one item not already being outlined in the 2 chapters, we pulled it back after comments from the development community and addressed it with chapter 13, chapter 14, adding those 2 sections and having those come here first. And the board asked us the last week to bring this all back at one time, so it was all together, so you could see everything and make sure that was fully clear and actually through the step process. Because we didn't want those 2 sections not to be seen by you because they were too significant to ever come here. But the other section was calling those out. So it's very applicable for those to come back and actually be looked at across the board. So that is what this version is now. It's taking that one section and adding the 2 new chapters for those 2 items that were not originally in UDO. I apologize, this is gonna be long. Okay, so a lot of this I've already seen before, in life, but it's just a little bit different. And there are 2 new chapters that you can actually look at instead of just having 2 subsections, 2 subsections. So briefly going through it, we updated section 1.5 and added some subsections within that. Just to reference the comprehensive plan, reference NC general statute language for comprehensive plan to include all of our other town adopted plans. So the bike and ped plan, the parks and recreation plan, other things. And those will be included in that definition that we've included in this section update. And we reference them by name instead of putting them in the definition of comprehensive plan. So that way, when they are updated separately, we don't have to keep going back and forth. The same thing with the year, because when they're updated, you don't want to have to update. You just take the most recent version and automatically updates. So you're not meddling where you don't have to. The other part of that is making sure that when you're reading the comprehensive definition, it tells you, it goes back to this section now. And then each plan is now actually defined in the definition section, which is one of the things that an APA fellow said, that your definitions, you need better definitions, or you need to correct that you're missing some. So those are actual items that we were adding because of that. An additional section we added was the specifications of standards details. So this is explicitly not a part of the comprehensive plan, but it is our engineering our specifications and standard details. And so it's just a nod to this, and you don't have development. So if you're coming into development, you know that this is where you look for specifications. And then another subsection 1.5.4 is policy and supporting documents. So these are outside of the comprehensive plan definition, but they're also important documents that guide the town's growth and development. Just a very, very quick note. Chapter 13 and the section headings are all new text, but I didn't want to do a red-green kind of combo because that's not accessible. So everything is new text that you're about to see. All right, so starting with chapter 13, we have 4 new sections. It's purpose and applicability, coordinated transportation review, supporting infrastructure, and transportation adjustments. I will note that there are no reserved sections 5 through 8 at the end. Those are probably going to come out. We don't need to reserve them unless y'all see something that we need to address.
The only thing, and it may just be my perception, but in looking at this, I mean, it says this chapter ensures adequate, safe, and efficient transportation facilities. But I don't see specifically addressed accessibility for individuals with mobility issues. I mean, I guess my question to you is, do you believe that that's woven in to the language that you have here?
Is actually meant to be woven in the actual items specifically. For example, the multimodal assessment, you would actually have that piece specifically in there on the app. It's based on what type of mode of transportation, whether it's the walking, whether it's smaller vehicles, the transit system piece, all that would be in that section right there. So they would have to talk about how you get in and out of the site. How do you get from one portion to the other, how it's connected. So it's actually supposed to be embedded in that. And that's a process document and checklist. And this is what they need to submit document, not something that you would put in the UDO. This is the overall process about the items that we will be requiring, not the details to it. We're trying to make sure that if we need to change something because it's not working, we do it in the document and not in the UDO itself. Also, just note that the purpose statement in this section will give you guidance to refer to the comprehensive transportation plan, the bike ped plan, the parks and rec plan.
And you'll also have accessibility if a developer comes in with parking. So that parking is a higher level than the town authorizes, it's gonna be kicked back to the ADA. And so there are things that developers will have to do first to, we say in ordinance. We reached the first yellow text, which is for discussion, and it's our applicability section. So, current language kind of leaves it open to interpretation on what a threshold might be, for when we apply the requirements of this chapter. And so I've wanted to kind of open discussion on what you believe should be the threshold for applicability, or when a coordinated transportation review would be required for a development.
Can you ask that again, but a little slower this time?
Definitely. So right now, the applicability statement is, shall apply to development applications that may impact the transportation system. And right now it reads that all development applications that may impact a site is vague.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to have that as a discussion for y'all to see what you've noticed in your time on planning board, what you believe would be best for a threshold for saying a smaller development might not have to do this full comprehensive coordinated review, but what is the scale for requiring those types of reviews?
Is there, I mean, having no knowledge of this whatsoever, is there like standards or is there other communities that have have thresholds? Like, can you give us examples of what other people may say? Do you have something like that?
We can use bigger cities like Charlotte and Raleigh. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's based on your traffic counts.
Yes, so we already have the TIA in place, and I've initiated the safety analysis for driveways. The last one is the multimodal, and that is when we're talking about the different perspectives of how the town connects. So if it's something simple as somebody's just redoing the building and there's a one change to an entrance, that would be, it's not really applicable. But when you get to something larger, someone's gonna develop a corner of a block, and then how do you get in and out of that section? What kind of use is it? We just need to know what the perception is from what's already been seen recently, because we have roughly a 22% growth rate in development. Chatham Park is roughly about half of that. So now development is coming in so quickly, we need to start looking at how this reacts. And that gets the way in of what you've seen on the plans even before I got here. I've been here, 9 months? So I know what I've seen on my side from different communities, larger communities, and development around the state. So this goes now to, as this community, what do you want to see? And this gives you that chance to weigh in. And that's what we want to do. And we're going to do the same thing with the development community, thinking about what interactions and overlap they have with other developments, and then what kind of breakpoint that creates within.
So in other municipalities, they use like a traffic count, or like once you hit a certain threshold of the traffic count, then the full transportation, what is it, TIA, transportation impact?
Analysis. So we already use that, yes, that's one of them. The safety analysis, when there's issues with the driveways and it has an overlap, grade changes at that driveway, multiple driveways lined up, driveways with roadways right beside of it, how far apart they are, site distances, all those items overlap that. The multimodal is the different types of the multi-use paths, the bike paths, the roadway section, in adding transit piece to it, all those types of overlaps. So we're now looking at a different scale of that addition. It's something that Raleigh, Charlotte, Cary even has an overlap with that piece. The more development they have, the more likely they are to use it.
Yeah. I wish I had a point of view on it, but is it possible that, I mean, I don't know if this is possible, but is it possible to like give us options? Like, here are 3 options you can pick from? I mean, again, having no basis of what this should look like, and want to make sure it's appropriate, for where we are and what we're doing.
We can do that as part when we're looking with the development community about what the options that they bring up is. Maybe we create 3 different scenarios and have them help us work through those, and we bring that to the board for that.
That, to me, that sounds reasonable, but.
Yeah, I honestly don't feel confident discussing this at all.
Yeah.
It would be better if you did that, gave us the scenarios.
Yeah.
But transportation is always such a big issue, and it's a big issue with the public, you know, any.
Yeah, that's why I'm sitting here thinking that we ought to just, say that we should do,
Something, but I can sit at my driveway, depending on what time like today, I couldn't get out my driveway for like almost 10 minutes. Cause I'm on 15501. And in the mornings, if I don't get out of there by 7:15, I'm gonna sit there 10, 15 minutes trying to get out. So it's a lot.
I don't know that comparing to Charlotte or Raleigh is applicable either, just because they're big cities and we're not. So maybe smaller population equivalent towns that have.
or towns that are going to be, or are at where we're gonna be at some point, like Holly Springs, Fuquay Marina, places like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I like the idea of when you have the conversation with the developers, if they tell you like, this would be very painful for us if we did it at this threshold, you know what I mean? Or whatever perspective they provide. And then giving us that, like, as some gristle to chew on, because, I have no idea how this is even evaluated, so. Thank you for that.
And then the next section, there's kind of applicability to what we would be requiring, which is a coordinated transportation review, which is just that comprehensive look that Nate was talking about earlier, including the safety analysis, multimodal assessment, and tracking study. And so we have just a few parameters, but a lot of that would be housed in another manual, like the specifications. So one of them is the duration of the review and how long that would last. It would last alongside the site plan approval. But if there are major modifications that would significantly increase traffic impacts, that's a cue for the town to say, we reserve the right to complete a new CTR because situations have changed.
You said that would be based on the site plan?
Yes, modifications to the site.
Most of the plans that are done are site plan or preliminary plat, and those would have the biggest impact and biggest point from what the changes would have to occur. Because you have to go back through the process of something significant changes. If it's over 10%, you have to go back through it.
That's when I have a plan that comes in with 100 units and then it becomes 200 units. Or something like that. So, at that point, that traffic's gonna change significantly.
Yeah. But the date, but I guess the question is like, I'm just giving an example and I don't know if this makes sense, but like, we just had the Cooper's Ridge conversation not that long ago. If the traffic plan was done then, is that when is that the?
Well, that was at
The rezoning.
zoning. So I don't, it wouldn't.
So when would it come?
Site plans.
Site plan, okay, cool. So that's like right before you're about to like dig and stuff.
Mhm.
So, okay, cool. So I just imagine the time, I don't know if digging is right. Don't quote me on that, but.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, but it's not like I'm doing it now, but the development's not gonna happen for 6 or 7 years and all the things that could change in that time frame. I just wanna make sure that I'm understanding that part.
And then, next is just some required transportation improvements. We provide a list, but it's not comprehensive. This is just something to not add the multimodal aspect that we were mentioning earlier. So talking about sidewalks and pedestrian crossings, as well as accessible routes and multi-use paths, bike lanes, and related facilities. And then also key back to stormwater and drainage infrastructure that's associated with function facilities.
One question.
Yeah.
Gotta ask this. Is anybody looking at these, and I think the term that I came across was micro mobility devices and how that's going to impact our streets, sidewalks, et cetera, because we're seeing more and more of those individualized hoverboards, motorized scooters, e-bikes.
I was waiting for that part too.
Some of those items we will have to add in, but it won't be in this section. That's what, when we have the reserve for, if we're gonna add a section, that's where it needs to be. The first part is get the actual overall first, and then get in the little nuances, the new things that are coming in as subsections of that. They're not the primary. The primary is the biggest concerns that we have on safety and making sure that that's taken care of. And then all these newer, the e-bikes, golf.
You name it, it's out there.
Mhm.
So the other items, that's a next step piece to it. We want to make sure we get this right first.
Thank you.
All right, and then the last one in this section is exceeded level of service standards. So if the traffic levels of service standards exceeded, then your report should, or a proposed report should evaluate the following things, which is identifying additional rights of ways, and mitigation strategies, as well as like potential phasing opportunities. All right, and then the next two sections, the first one is about supporting infrastructure. So making sure that provision of supporting infrastructure, which is sidewalks, youth paths, drainage facilities are included in your complete transportation network. And then another reference to the design standards that will be in town plans and town specifications and standards. And then as well, one last section on transportation adjustments. So this is where the NCDOT standards supersede the town standards because they'd be stricter. So that the NCDOT standards would apply.
And the reason that statement is there is making sure that if someone wants to take over the road, they want the state to take over the road, or if they have items like traffic signals or bridges, that so it should be a state standard for that section instead of to the town and then the state saying, oh, I'm not going to take it because it doesn't have these items. We need to make sure it's at that level for them to take it. So we do not have the capacity to take on some of those items, and it'll probably be a significant amount of time before we do.
Okay, 14. Great. 14 is divided into 8 sections. Same thing that you put some applicability, and it's measures for ensuring that the town can handle the infrastructure it takes on, and that infrastructure it's accepting it's built to town specifications and standards. There's also responsibilities, efficiency of infrastructure for acceptance, infrastructure acceptance procedures, and warranty review, as well as the final acceptance of public improvements, acceptance, warranty, inspection criteria, and securities. I will go through all of them individually. Just want to give you section titles. So purpose and applicability, this is also just to make sure that everything that the town accepts is built to town standards, and it also includes a developer definition. This is specific to this chapter. There is already a current developer definition within the UDO, and so instead of rewriting that and potentially having impacts throughout the entire UDO, we included a definition of developer that is specific to this chapter. And then section 14.2 is about responsibility. So who's responsible for proper installation of all improvements, and how that's documented as well. And then as well as who is taking on the costs for roads, sidewalks, and multi-use paths, drainage, and buffers in park areas during the maintenance period and after the maintenance period when the town accepts it.
Now we'll note that a lot of this, a high percentage of this was actually in the specs, but some of it was not as clear, and it's more defined now in the specs than it was, but it's put in the UDO to outline the process, that when someone comes in, they see the process and understand who's responsible for what. But the details of that is more in the specs on top of this.
Yeah, that's definitely good. A lot of the details that you're wondering where they are, they're in the town specs already, or are planned to be adopted into the town specs. But this is just to formalize that process. So we have some backbone in the UDO in a codified language to make sure that everyone is meeting those steps and they know where to file those.
These, so for O&M agreements and bond payments, sureties, things like that, those we are requiring all of that before final plat. Okay.
And that is actually better outlined in the specs and how they're submitted and how they're signed off on. The process to that is in that document.
Perfect.
Section 14.3 is about sufficiency of the infrastructure that the town may be accepting. And so it's just to make sure that that threshold and that level of service is being met. And that level of standard is also being met for all infrastructure that the town will be accepting. And the subsection is kind of a pressure relief valve. So if there's something that may affect that sufficiency, then the town can have a conversation with the developer to kind of mitigate that.
This is also important when you have older infrastructure in the area and something is found there in the field and there's an as-built condition that needs to be addressed. This is one of the ways to do that.
Section 14.4, infrastructure acceptance procedures. And this is just a paragraph that tells to look at the town specifications and standards. And that also tells that infrastructure is not officially accepted until those standards are met. And then the town accepts it. So the development services for engineering division will accept that. Section 14.5, there's a bit of a warranty period. So much of this language was moved to the specifications. So if this is in place, it needs to be amended later on down the road. We don't have to do the UDO amendment formalized process, but some of the language here is just meant to outline the process actually. So 14.1 deals with duration, and typically warranty period will be for 1 year, beginning on the date of the letter of initial acceptance. So then they'll have the warranty period of 1 year, and then they'll have a letter of final acceptance. The extension period for deficiency list is just if a developer can't meet that deficiency list within the warranty time, then we can grant an extension of time. 14.5.3 and 14.5.4 go together, they go hand in hand. So this is codifying the types of infrastructure that the town won't accept. So if it's non-standard in development, or if it's not built to town specification or standards, there may be an extended warranty period or enhanced warranty requirements that the infrastructure may have to go through for the town to accept it.
The example on this is if something was constructed without an actual full set of plans or plans were never submitted to the town, or so there was a field finding and that was never, I guess, brought to the town's attention and it was found out after the fact. Those are 3 of the primary examples.
So some of this language is codified here, conditions of extended warranty acceptance, but some of it is also available in the town specifications and standards. So a lot of the nitty-gritty details will go to the town specifications. And then 14.5.5 also deals with another maintenance responsibility. So it outlines maintenance relief and routine maintenance that the developer may be responsible for. And so it also goes into corrective and preventative maintenance. So any maintenance during the warranty period, the developer is responsible for before the town finally accepts it. And then the last subsection in this section is about emergency repairs. So in the event of water main breaks, sanitary sewer main blockage, or failures of streets and bridges, if it's a necessity, the town or Tri River Water can come and maintain that. And so that's just language, making sure that that's there for the program. And then the next section was originally pages long, but all of that has been moved to the specifications. And now we just have a reference saying, please look at the specifications if you want to understand the procedure for final acceptance of public utilities. Making sure that list of efficiencies is met, the warranty is met, and that you have that letter of final acceptance from the engineering division. I'll be doing 14.6.1. This is roadways that are by other quasi judicial governmental agencies that are going to be accepted by the town. So just saying that the town will require a preliminary and final acceptance for in walkthroughs of this infrastructure before it's accepted and before the end of the 1-year warranty period. Okay. And then the next section is about acceptance and warranty inspection criteria. So this is just to make sure that all public and private improvements are going to be installed in conformance with the construction plans that were approved, the development plan, and the public improvements agreements. So just making sure that everything aligns really. And you can also go to the specifications and standards for more detail and more comprehensive detail. And as well, that subsection deals with acceptance of private streets, making sure that, again, we're covered and they're built to town specifications and standards.
And just to revisit, I think maybe an earlier section, if something like if the town identifies a problem and the developer doesn't fix the problem, what's the recourse for the town?
So I don't remember where I put it in here, but one of the items was just because that we didn't find it the first time, we come back and we find it, we have the right to say, we found something that's significant, it is a failure and it was done during this piece, it needs to be adjusted. And so there's two ways that can be done. One is either the town will fix it and then give them the bill, or they fix it, whichever is more appropriate at the time, but it's definitely gonna be a conversation, not something we're gonna try to hammer on somebody we just expect. That's a reasonable, there's a state requirement, it's a 3 and 6 for the warranty line for something that was not found, so that would come into play. If it's beyond that, that would be more on us, because there'd be something that would happen after that time period. Generally, 2 years is a good average. 3 is where you would see bigger issues. So we try to catch it, and that's what some things like the SEMs inspections yearly, you will always see it by the end of the year. That's why we say 1 year more minimum warranty. And then 2 is for if you have a major infrastructure item that's come in, you've got constant construction over it, you're going to see that wear and tear during that time period and know where the pressure points are. So that's where we would definitely be looking for stuff like that.
Thank you.
So just for information, let's say that we have a repair that's necessary during the warranty period. Is that then that repair, that activity, and does that get an additional year beyond that? Or is that held to the original year?
Good question.
That's gonna depend on what it is. If it's significant enough that it does more than like a patch or something like that, that's gonna require a conversation. That may require extension, but that is dependent on an issue specifically. And if there's a failure to that degree, it's gonna go to that 3-6 year mark. It's not gonna be just that original. That's why that additional piece is there, is we're gonna keep an eye on it. So let's go back to that.
Yes, they're separate. And then the last section of this amendment is section 14.8, which is securities. And so there's quite a bit of state language on performance guarantees, and this is hand in hand with that. And so a lot of this is based in 1 CTD 804 and 804.1. So a lot of this language has been modified to make sure that we're in compliance with state statutes as well. And it also relies on the improvements agreement. So this is an agreement with the town from the developer, basically establishing a minimum amount of time for a lease as well as a completion period. Conditions constituting a default by the developer and remedies upon. Making sure everything's covered. As well as a completion period. That completion period is to wait just state minimum criteria. Right, so there's no more section. It's section 12.5. The terms and uses are defined again. And in this, there was, I think, comprehensive plan was added to the front of bicycle pedestrian plan, comprehensive transportation plan, future land use plan. For example, we removed comprehensive plan off those, just so now we're not saying that comprehensive plan, bike pedestrian plan is something completely different than the actual adopted bike pedestrian plan. So just to make sure that those are consistent. Any questions?
I want to go back to the very beginning. Section 1.5.4. It talks about supporting documents, and it said that those documents may also be considered. Why is that not must be considered?
So that language is, those plans are outside of the NCGS, the general statutes definition of comprehensive plan, so we can't say shall. But we want to make sure that those are still referenced and they're still guiding factors. I don't believe we can put shall language.
It's more restrictive than the standard for the state. We cannot go beyond that.
Wonderful job, guys. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, thank you.
The clarification really makes a big difference.
Thank you for holding on. One more.
Yeah.
This is
Transportation is a biggie. Yes, transportation's a biggie, so, and it's always an issue, no matter what kind of development you have. So that just makes it very, see what it is, and this is it. So that's what we need.
So if no one has any further questions on this section, we'll move on to 2026-11.
observation subdivision.
Subdivision. So currently there is a section 2.6.2.3 in the UDO that governs conservation subdivisions. And we'll say as a note, conventional subdivisions in the residential, the RA5 district, the RA2 district, and the RA districts they all are required to go through a special use permit process. But conservation subdivisions are allowed by right in the RA5 and the RA2. So this is in line with the future land use plan that wants us to put conservation subdivisions in natural resource target areas. But we wanted to make sure that the language within the UDO gives us proper guidance and proper clarity into what the conservation subdivision actually is. So that when they're being built by right, they're following the guidelines that are listed in future land use plan. So currently the language within 6.2.3 grants modification to lot size, but it doesn't really specify conservation standards. So what would happen with those open spaces and what's allowed within those open spaces. And so we kind of fleshed out what's currently there. And so we have 4 sections. We have the purpose, the applicability, the conservation and development plan, and development standards. So the purpose was expanded and it includes a bulleted list now. Let me run through it. Bulleted list of its priorities for the development that's pursuing a conservation subdivision. So conserving that open land and making sure that the areas that are conserved contain productive agricultural soils, areas of steep slopes, and unique and sensitive natural features. So wildlife habitats, very stream corridors, wetlands, and floodplains. And then we also want to encourage the maintenance and enhancement of that open space and of wildlife habitats and environmental and natural and cultural resources. So expanding it to not just include environmental land, but also cultural land that's really important to the history and overall to the sphere. And then we're also saying that we want to minimize land disturbances and erosion through the retention of existing vegetation. We're going to preserve those scenic views that will be in those RA districts. And reduce that percentage density from the roadways, so we still feel like we're in a residential, a rural residential agricultural district. And we also want to make sure that we're including that aspect of connectivity, and we're creating links through open lands and by the recreation uses. But just an expansion of the purpose statement, so everyone's on clear footing.
So this also goes back to the states. They have a standard now, and it's available on a BA site. It's also available in forestry, so you can actually see some of this is taken directly from the state, and some of it is, we're trying to keep as close to what we had, but expand to make sure it matches correctly and prevent downzoning at the same time. So kind of give it a nice even across the board. Some of this will require some input as well, which we'll get to that part.
Do the state standards give a specific percentage for the amount of land that has to be preserved?
It varies per whichever version, because it actually has ag uses. It has a whole series, a list of potential uses and what the percentages could be. And then it talks about conservation and just open space. So you're talking about your rec area. So it just depends on which version of those sets you put together. This is the list that we currently have, but we do need to make some decisions about what those conservation areas. So we have it outlined in another page back to discuss the priority of the conservation space areas, what those should be, and that will actually have a bigger, I guess, impact on that percentage than what we have right now. So we can, I think we're at the 50% is what should be conserved, but the threshold of how that changes based on density is the other part that we need to discuss, is how dense are they going to be allowed to go? What is a good incentive? And then how much of that last 25% between this 25% that has to be maintained for the original one, and that the use of LID, low impact, yeah. It's not working now. Good job. And then the use of that piece for that first 25%, and then this another 25% in here is what all the utilities, clear open space area that they can use, that's like full access, active. And then there's this 50% that's the conservation. How much of that 25%, if they shift it this way in the density, what kind of materials can they use to get additional surfaces that are not impervious, and use that portion for like a road versus like if we do a pervious surface for a walking trail, what's the difference between those and how does that look? So that's one of the issues where we've already had, actually we've had several meetings on conservation subdivision with the development community as it is. So that's already been, they've already seen it like 3 or 4 times, but we have other items that we still need to address as the community and figure out what that looks like. So what is going to be our standard? So we have a lot of their input, but we want to see what you have, and then we're going to bring it out to even opener.
I will say there are a lot of really good resources online. The NC Department of Forestry, I think, NC State's Department of Forestry has a conservation handbook that gives you a model ordinance. And in that model ordinance, they have specific, like, you could go route A, or you could go route B. And so a lot of that language was from that. And
That's what I was talking about.
Decisions. Yeah. Okay. And there's also a lot of great precedent of other cities and towns and counties. So we looked at Durham, Henderson County has one. So there's a lot of good language already out there in different municipalities that we try to incorporate here. So currently conservation subdivisions are not in all zoning districts. That's already pretty language that could then be Cecilia. So I don't believe that you can change that. It's potentially be permitting or taking away a permitted use, and so that would be considered downzoning. But we can say that you have to go through preliminary plat approval by the board of commissioners, so that's just an additional. And then also adding in language, making sure that if this modification isn't granted explicitly within this section, then you got to go back to your underlying zoning district intensity and dimensional standards.
So the current version that is in the UDO is vague, and it is actually just there are 2 comments per each of the zoning districts in the table, but it didn't give any setbacks or need those items. So traditionally, in that case, it goes back to the most restrictive piece if it's not outlined. Otherwise, you have, everybody's gonna have a different version and you don't have a standard set that says this is gonna be your minimum or how they affect other properties that are adjacent, and you don't wanna have something that's totally different visually from those sections or doesn't line up. So this is one of those ways to address that, because there is literally empty sentences or sentences that end out of nowhere with nothing in it. So this is how we're addressing both issues at the same time.
Yeah, sorry, in my excitement to get into this ordinance, I skipped the preceding sections. So the first couple tables are just making sure that when you're looking at developing conservation subdivision, you're not looking all throughout the media. You can only come to section 6.2.3. And that way it'll just be a little bit more streamlined. And that way we can get more modifications within the section instead of addressing all of the tables that are dimensional standards. And then there was also a mention of conservation subdivisions, in the watershed critical area overlay. And a lot of that is just making sure it's clean, and it references the ordinance that we're updating right now, so 6.2.3, and having the same management requirements for both of those, regardless of if you're in the WCAG or if you're not. So entirely new language is going to be 6.2.3.c, which is your conservation development plan. So a lot of the model ordinances point to an initial site map that has to be done for a conservation subdivision. That's basically saying, at your pre-submittal meeting, you're going to submit a map that identifies all of these areas that we're trying to conserve in our purpose statement. So making sure that your wetlands are identified, your floodplains, your areas of steep slope. So it identifies things that have to be and things that you can include. But those will be brought to town staff in a pre-submittal meeting, and we'll go over it together and make sure that we're in line with what areas are being conserved and what being regulated for development. And so it's your conservation and development plan is essentially two parts. So the site analysis map, which is your conservation piece, and then your yield plan, which is your development piece. And so your yield plan is essentially how many houses could you put on your parcel or your tract if you were building a full conventional subdivision? And so that's allowing the density within the underlying zoning district to carry forward in conservation. So we avoid a down zone situation. And we're allowing them to have flexibility and still get their maximum amount of conventional lots within one parcel, but we want that scooted away and away from your development or your conservation, if that makes sense.
So under the site analysis map, I see there's E, general vegetation characteristics. Is there any identification of wildlife or anything like that?
I believe that would just be your tree types or your vegetation, so like your shrubs, if your area is covered, but we can add wildlife habitats if that's what you're meaning.
I mean, that's something I would be interested in, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And it's just in that the developer is not required to be held against their yield plan. So like just a proposed idea, the only thing they'll be held to is the amount of lots they can get in their parcel tract. But if they show a street, they're not tied to that street that they show in the pre-submittal meeting. Okay, and then the next section is development standards. So some of this language is existing and most of it is new. So for density, we're allowing a percentage density bonus if you conserve like X percentage over what's minimally required. So we're allowing, say if you conserve 60% instead of 50%, you would get a 10% density bonus, and that's based on your yield plan. So if your yield plan allows 50 lots, then you would get 10% more of that 50.
So that would mean that with the density bonus, you could have more more numbers of units than you could have in the conventional plan.
Yes, yes, that would be a modification. And that's kind of to make sure that the original language says that you can't have more than 4 dwelling units per acre, and that's a lot more than is allowed under the yield plan. And so we want to make sure that that's still able to be captured, so we're not down zoning anything. But we want to just add some specification that you're not outright doing that. You have to also consider a little bit more. And then that comes with its own stipulations, A through C. And you'll see that original language is right below there.
And this also goes to address that the original language said 75% either not disturb or natural vegetation, but that was not clear what that looked like. Because having that at 75% and then 25% is all they can have on the impervious, it really didn't give a clarity of what would be allowed for that amount of disturbance. It's like stuck there at the 75%, but I gave them 10% according to what's in the language, then they have to be at 65% and then figuring out they can't do all those impacts. So this is like addressing how much they're allowed to impact at the same time.
The A through C kind of gives you requirements of like how you would calculate the density bonus as well. So just so it's codified language. All right, and then 2 deals with lot size and setbacks. So originally, language just did lot size, so you could have fluctuation in your lot width or your lot area. But then the measurements within your lot size, your lot standards and setbacks weren't granted relief. So it's a real rub for development. You can't reduce a lot area without reducing setbacks. And so we wanted to make sure that there's actual language here because it wasn't originally granted modifications. And so what you see in A through E is going through each setback and lot area and width and seeing the reductions that you're allowed. So I just want to say that you could do reduce by 50%, but if your 50% reduces below 40 feet, like per B, if you're looking at minimum lot width, then 40 feet would be the minimum that you could have. So there are thresholds and standards to make sure that you're not insanely uncharacteristic with your neighboring parcels and properties. Built upon area, which is the third one. The black text is already in the ordinance, but we added B and C, which is streets and sidewalks. So streets deals with making sure that on-street parking is prohibited, and that's just to make sure that your streets in your subdivision are not cluttered, and it'll be easier for emergency vehicles and fire safety vehicles to be able to not have to maneuver around parked cars if they need to. As well as the sidewalk requirement, making sure that there are different thresholds for when you're required to do sidewalk on one side or sidewalk on both sides of the road. Majority of the remainder have to deal with conservation space and what that definition of conservation space is within a conservation subdivision. So right now we adjusted the language, so it's a little bit different than what we've been talking about. I want to get your opinion. So originally it was 50%. We then parsed it down to a minimum of 30% for the unconstrained and buildable land. So that goes back to the site analysis map saying, here are the areas that you've identified that are absolutely unbuildable. You cannot count that in your conservation space. You have to go into your buildable area and take that percentage out.
Those spaces would include your buffered streams and steep slopes and.
Yeah, your like riparian buffers and your floodplains. I don't believe that has a specific definition, so we can definitely add one. And then there is a nod to section 5.8 within that paragraph that says if your conservation space has been clear cut within 5 years of preliminary plat submission, then with intent to clear cut and then develop a conservation subdivision, you're not allowed to do that. So you have to wait.
have that degree or tracked, say a percentage of it. That's what it's supposed to be for.
Okay, and then sections A through E deal with what that conservation space looks like. So making sure that 20% of your conservation space remains completely untouched by development. No land disturbing activity can happen on this percentage of your conservation space, just to make sure that it is original vegetation and you're not allowed to cut down and then replant and say that's your conservation space. As well as I'm not gonna try to pronounce that word right now.
Contiguity,
I got,
something like that.
why
Contiguous.
now?
That
A
one.
minimum of 60% of your designated conservation space has to be connected. And so we have a little bit of a stipulation that if your strip of land that you're saying is conservation space is narrower than 30%, it's not gonna count. So making sure that we have our big contiguous parcels, or areas of land within your parcel. That way, wildlife habitats can correctly maneuver through your property without having to go through someone's front yard. Yeah, okay, this one is fun. This one you guys can decide on. So in other languages and in the model ordinance, there are what May was mentioning earlier, priority areas for conservation. So for example, the city of Durham has a conservation subdivision that ranks the priority areas for conservation in a primary bucket and then a secondary bucket. So in order to go to the secondary bucket, you gotta fill the primary bucket first. So if you have a property that only has like a little sliver that's in your floodplain, and that's considered a primary bucket, you'd have to conserve all of that floodplain before you can go to the secondary list of uses and start conserving out those uses. And so that's something that we don't have currently here. We have a priority order of designation for conservation space. And so we wanted to kind of get your solicitation.
And I have one more piece on this. We have the 5-year notation where there's been clearing, but if the entire area has not been cleared and it's along the stream buffer and it's an area that needs to be restored or planted for as an actual riparian buffer, and we want to maintain that, this is one of those areas we could put in is how much of that counts towards that with the an overplant scenario or riparian planting scenario. So that we would like that to be one of the contribution pieces to this discussion as a priority, and then how we want to deal with that, what percentage and how it needs to be done. We don't want the entire clear cut property, but if they have a section, we want to address that way and give it as a way to reinstall as that as a conservation area. That was originally cleared. It is such an issue.
Again, I'll go back to your suggestion on the previous one, and that is, maybe you should be bringing to us some examples of priority of conservation area space language from other, similar situated townships and.
Yeah.
Rather than doing it all. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, we can definitely do that, and if it sticks in your mind, after you leave here, you can definitely email us, your thoughts or anything that, you want to, past local amendments that we just reviewed. All right, and then going into D, so, there's an open space, requirement within the UDO, and we just make sure that this satisfies that, so there's an additional open space requirement within your conservation subdivision. The area that you conserve is going to satisfy that requirement. Which goes into E, was allowed within your conservation space. Obviously, this is going to be outside of your undisturbed area, so you couldn't put any of these uses within your undisturbed area, but there's still an 80% remainder that you can have conservation land, agricultural uses, active and passive recreational uses, secondary stormwater control measures, trails, and minimal roads. All right, and then number 5 deals with preservation of conservation space, so making sure that the conservation space that you designate is going to be protected in perpetuity.
Yeah.
by a binding legal instrument. And it's clearly set forth within, this paragraph, making sure that, you know, when you designate that land is gonna be protected, and we have documentation of that. And included in that documentation, is the conservation space management plan, so who manages and maintains the conservation space. Whether it's the town, whether it's, a homeowners association or a nonprofit organization. We're allowing you to do any of those, but we just want to make sure that the town has documentation and has responsibilities clearly laid into that plan. So we know who to go to. That makes sense. Okay, and then utilities is existing language. And then just for clarification, we added another definition of conservation space, just to make sure, kind of like with the developer definition in chapter 14, that we're covering all of our blanks and making sure that we're referring to the correct terms. Thank you.
Very good job.
Made it.
You made it.
So
It's a lot of work.
it really is, and I really appreciate this. I believe that the UDO currently requires that natural resources conservation target areas have to do conservation plans. This doesn't change that, right?
Right, in your future land use plan, is where the natural resource target areas are, but those, the abbreviation, the natural resources target areas hasn't been, taken to the UDO yet. So there's a reference to an acronym in here that in RCO, and that's nowhere else within the UDO.
So that's one of those parking lot items that we talked about, just like C1 is also a parking lot item. It was taken out and that's got to be put back in, and it was not. So those are two items that have to be done to support this as well. We are aware of that.
Another quick question. This is section 2.6.2, number 4. Y'all didn't even change this, but the word vegetative is in there. Is that defined somewhere? Does that just mean grass, or does it mean, what does vegetative mean?
It's 2.2.
Yeah. Number 4. It's in black. I mean, y'all didn't change it, but.
It's in black, we did not change it, but we can look and make sure that the definition is. Make sure that's.
No, I just want to know what it meant. I don't want it to just.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
That one's.
Want to have anything else you'd like to ask? Hey, Elizabeth, thank you so much for
Thank you.
clarifying all of this for us.
Appreciate your patience.
It's certainly very, very helpful for us, especially now, when we see these as agenda items, you know, as we'll be able to make a much better informed decision on them.
I have a comment before we move on. I do remember when we were passing this UDO initially, we were very pressed for time. And the UDO that we had previously was so out of date, and we were really just pushing to get this through. So I do know there's a long list of parking lot items. So thank you for revisiting them and working through that diligently, because I know that when it was passed and adopted, it was not a complete document. So I think it's great that we're continuing to stay on top of it. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll move on. Does anybody have anything they would like to say for board comment period? Thank you so much to the staff.
Yes, I just wanted to say at the end of our last meeting, we asked about data centers and ICE facilities, and y'all were going to look into that. And I just wondered if there was any update on that. And now we also have a pipeline to be concerned about. So,
We have a person in Chatham County.
anything about those? It wasn't you. At the end of our last meeting, we asked y'all to look into issues about data centers and ice facilities. And I would also like to add pipelines to that. I just wondered if there had been, if y'all had an update for us.
Data centers are not allowed in the UDO. One thing, we'll have to look into pipeline pieces, but utilities usually are, it depends on how they're done and what that, we have to see those plants come through, just like in utilities. If we have Google, we review all the Google permits, anything that would come through the town, we would get and we would have to review. Can't put a utility in and not know where it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Good. All right, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion from Frida, second. Second by Alan Wilson. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you.